This is Sleeping in Trees, the audiobook. Chapter 36, Concrete Eyes. My boyhood home in South Miami began its life as many at the time did, a stack of cinder blocks cemented together with a flat roof of tar paper covered with white gravel. I am not sure if this was a statement of architectural style in the 1960s, hurricane-proof, or just cheap to build, but clearly some combination of these directed the design and development of literally thousands of homes just like ours, sprawling over any land that was stable enough to support them. Between the Everglades to the west and the beaches to the east, there was an ever-growing blanket of cinder block homes laid end to end. When pressed, my parents pointed out that this design and construction was required by hurricane code. Even as a young boy, I found it dull and monotonous, but hurricanes were serious affairs, and I could understand the reasons for placing durability before aesthetics. When they acquired the house, they already had plans to spiff it up a bit. The modest bungalow grew over the next decade into quite a compound. The first addition included a shop. As an inventor, my dad needed a shop where he could invent. This was essential. Within a year or two of moving in, a large addition off the family room appeared and began to acquire all manner of machines and materials. Much like Dan's, the small hardware store on Red Road that Dad so admired and visited frequently, his new shop was stocked with anything one required to build just about anything. There were fasteners, a wide array of twine, string, tape, and rope. Chain was available in several sizes. Nuts, bolts, and washers galore were housed in small steel drawers, as was any type of screw, machine or wood, in any possible size, made from a host of metals including, oddly, aluminum. Also available were sheets of material for fabrication, including plastic, brass, copper, aluminum, steel, stainless steel, and of course wood. Lots of wood, in almost every imaginable shape, size, variety, and origin. There was leather, boat-building materials including fiberglass, varnish, sailcloth, resins and epoxies, and innumerable hand tools, including my favorite, a beautiful antique drill. This masterful little machine had time-worn oak handles, and the crank had a wonderful helical gear that drove another perpendicular helical gear and in turn rotated the bit. When lightly oiled, it operated like a precision Swiss clock, ever so lightly clicking as the rotating gears meshed on their circular journey. With a brand new bit, no piece of wood was safe. There were early Saturday mornings when I would head out with this glorious piece of mechanical engineering and rove around the neighborhood, drilling holes in trees and other things. It went like a hot knife through butter, with barely any effort at all. I realize today that there must have been those who came after me and saw the holes I had drilled and puzzled over how they had gotten there and what their purpose might be. We had almost every grade and weight of sandpaper, highly flammable chemicals like acetone, and non-flammable ones like mercury. A bit about mercury. Dad had a small bottle of it that sat on the windowsill above the workbench. He said it was very expensive, and we were not to get into it. Mercury is an element found in ore deposits the world over, and before the microprocessor was invented, it was used in thermometers and sphygmomanometers, a blood pressure cuff. Mercury is indeed an odd element, because no matter what we tried to do with it, there was no cooperation, and it was heavy as lead. If one pours it from a bottle, it puddles like any other liquid. That's about the only similarity, because one can then do virtually nothing with it. It cannot be wiped up or dried up, nor can it make anything wet. It's not wet. It's a dry, liquid metal, and very cold to the touch. Mercury just sits there inertly. It will wiggle if jiggled. Imagine liquid chrome. It most certainly could not be picked up. Exhausting all attempts to do anything meaningful with mercury, the most fun we ever had with it was to just pour it from height onto a hard surface. The result is a bit hard to describe. As the metal blob lands hard at high speed, it explodes, producing a sound just like 1,000 plastic BBs striking plexiglass. Upon impact, it reconstitutes into thousands of tiny, globular, chrome-like clones. If they ever touch one another again, they will fuse like magnets, 1,000 separate globules becoming a single blob of mercury almost instantly. I understand today, unlike 45 years ago, that mercury is also highly toxic. Oddly then, when my mother swabbed the blood-red watery salve from a little black bottle with a small glass applicator all over a cut or bruise, she was coating it with mercurochrome, made principally from mercury. An entire industry emerged in the 1970s to separate people and wildlife from the nasty stuff, as it had leached from a variety of manufacturing processes into water sources all over the globe and was soon linked to a variety of health issues. Mercury had its place and purpose in the world of manufacturing, but it is a very toxic, nasty substance. Humans and wildlife best stand clear. Dad's new shop had widgets, grease and oil, drill presses, sanders, binders, riveters, planers, bandsaws, winches, clamps, every size and type of nail, and a wide variety of additional devices capable of building almost anything a healthy imagination could concoct. He did just that. The home additions came in waves. Coincident with the shop was the extension of the family room that jutted out into our backyard. The kitchen followed the same path and soon consumed the center of the house. Next up was the expansion of the pool, where I'd learned to swim wearing only a bubble. A bubble was a styrofoam football with a strap for aid in flotation, sometimes attached to a child who could not yet swim. I had proof that bubbles worked. It was a hot summer day, and we were visiting Aunt Jean up the road at a home she was renovating. Paddling around the pool at age 5, bubble securely attached, I was on my own exploring the entire aquatic expanse. Before long, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich lured me to shore. If one does not need to float, a bubble can be a rather uncomfortable device, so I popped mine off and dropped it onto the patio. I gobbled up the sandwich and washed it down with a cold glass of milk. Wiping my hands on my swimsuit, I jumped up and raced back to the pool. Balancing briefly on the edge next to the ladder, I leapt out as far as I could into the deep end. As I dropped into the cool water, I was struck almost instantly by a most freeing experience, one I had not felt ever before. With my bubble laying 50 feet away on the patio, I was completely unencumbered by the cumbersome flotation. I sank immediately, like a small boulder, straight to the bottom. Within a few moments, I was literally standing underwater 8 feet down. I could not swim, so I looked up and held my breath. I had no idea what to do, so I just waited. To my good fortune, Mom had watched the entire episode unfold. She alerted Dad, and within a few more seconds, a long, hairy arm crashed down into the water above my head. With one good shove off the bottom, I latched onto his hand and was yanked up and away with a burst from my watery grave. Back to the home edition. Our pool's modest rectangular shape morphed aggressively into a massive polygon with vaulted screens overhead to accommodate a diving board. The final expansion was vertical and included a second-story master suite, rooftop deck for sunbathing fun, and my own bedroom addition that jutted out back. It came with a private outside doorway to which I could freely enter and exit unnoticed day or night. Thanks, Mom and Dad. One lazy Sunday afternoon, I was bored and milling about in the side yard. Dad, on a mission to add additional improvements to our ever-expanding compound, decided to extend the driveway out and around the hibiscus hedge and into a newly constructed carport. The garage had long ago been consumed by bikes, lawnmowers, and other junk. The carport was nearly complete, but, as is often the case, the construction workers had headed off to fish or snare a few gators before cleaning up the work site. Maybe they would return in a couple of weeks or so. Wandering about, I came upon a wheelbarrow full of an interesting powdery substance next to where we stored the garbage cans. It was just like silk. I can only describe it as talcum powder, but gray in color and without the pleasant fragrance. As I would later learn, it was dry cement powder. All it needed was water to begin the chemical process that turned it into smooth gray rock. For some incalculable reason, I scooped up a pile in my hands, peered into the mountain of powder, and clapped. The result was a high-speed blast of the fine cement powder straight into my wide-open eyes. With the water it now needed, the chemical process of creating rock began. Quickly recalling the images of a leathery construction worker with a hose in hand, mixing sacks of the stuff into a mud that then became Dad's carport floor, supporting a Lincoln Continental, I realized in a hurry that step one was to find someone to flush the cement out of my eyes. Pronto. First, I raced headlong into the garbage cans. These were old-school cans, made of galvanized steel, heavy and loud when thrown about. This was a good thing because I then knew that the garage was 5 feet ahead, on the left, and the kitchen door another 30 feet in a straight line. Bikes on the left, storage cabinets, and the red Toro riding lawnmower on the right. Up 3 steps, straight into the kitchen. My brothers and I had just finished dinner, so I calculated that there was an excellent probability that Dad and Mom were settling down with a scotch at the mahogany bar. My estimates were spot on. In a matter of seconds, I was upside down in the kitchen sink, as Dad held me by my ankles and sprayed the faucet water full force into my eyes. This hurt like hell. My brothers couldn't have been more intrigued, as they bobbed up and down around the sink like hysterical chihuahuas, eager to see what was going on. They were giddy with the prospect of having a blind brother, or even better, one with a single eye patch, just like a pirate. Sadly, they would be denied. My parents asked why I did such a boneheaded thing. I said I had no idea. For a couple of days afterwards, my vision was murky and foggy, like when we would swim all day in our chlorinated pools or algae-packed Rock Lake with our eyes wide open. It was to be a refreshing evening swim. For Dork and I, it didn't go quite as planned. Chapter 37 is up next, and it's called Evening Dip.